got stories to share and chores to do. Marriage and mayhem under the sky so blue. Welcome to the good life. We'll pull you through. Rural roots in cowboy boots. Laughter and love where the dirt runs deep.
Welcome back to Rural Roots and Cowboy Boots, where the cows aren't the only thing full of crap some days. I'm Patrick.
And I'm Amy. And this week's episode is a ride, y'all. From moon madness to Coldplay chaos, and then straight into the heartbreak of being a farmer who feeds the world but struggles to feed your own family.
But don't worry, we're ending on a high note with a shout out to some quiet legends who make the cattle world better every day.
Let's dig in. So it's hard to believe that we're at another week of this podcast, and we're now on episode 4.
Right.
And you would think that we would run out of things to talk about, but here's the fun part about this is we really haven't talked that much since last Sunday, and we've lived together and been married together because Patrick has kind of been...
Wait. So you're saying that I could be married and not married, and then married again and then not married? Because that's what you said. Bingo, go ahead.
All I know is that this week has been very quiet in our house because Patrick has been pretty quiet in our house. And I promise I've asked, what's wrong? Are you okay? Do you feel good? Did I do something? What's happening here?
It was the moon.
The moon. Tell me more about this moon.
You all have a time of month, and we have our own time of month, and let's deal with the moon.
The moon did it for you. Okay. So I wasn't exactly sure what was happening because it was like we would be great, and we'd be laughing, and then we'd be good, and then all of a sudden, Patrick would just go.
But we were in the early waning crescent phase of the moon.
Okay, and there's some science to this about the moon, right?
Right.
Okay, and how does it make you feel?
It makes you feel like you need to pull yourself back and give yourself some introspection and winding down as the moon is shrinking.
Okay, so the whole time I thought you were just being a jerk. You were just the moon.
Pulling myself back with the shrinking of the moon.
Okay, all right. Well, that would explain your crankiness. That would explain, you said, I can't sleep.
Right.
That would explain, you woke up and, oh, my head hurts.
Right.
And, it was...
I heard you talking in the middle of the night. That's why my head hurt.
See, it's kind of been... I got to a point where I just didn't say anything. Even the kids were like, Mom, what's going on with Dad? And I was like, I don't know, but he hasn't yelled at me, so...
It's the early waning crescent.
He's just... Okay, so if women PMS, this is just crescent moon. How often does this happen?
Well, once every 30 days.
That would explain a lot. I'm being real.
Phase of the moon.
That would totally explain a lot. So... Again, we're in ag, and I remember once upon a time, my family would live and breathe by the Farmer's Almanac.
Right.
And you had to buy that, and you looked and used...
When you plant, that's when you spray, and that's we don't mow our pastures for weeds until you get on the shrinking of the moon.
Why? I've never heard that. Why?
Because the weeds won't grow back that year. It's no joke.
That's no joke. Okay.
Yeah. If you do it on the front part of the moon, the front part of the phase of the moon, then the weeds will grow back. But if you do it on the back side, it's the shrinking, it's pulling everything down.
Okay. Well,
But now, your dad had some humdingers.
You're exactly right. And again, I was raised in a house with a lot of old wives' tales, a lot of superstitions, and all of those things were very, very much.
He and I got blistered fishing one day. We got sunburned so bad. So what did he crank out?
He said, and I think it was the Reader's Digest.
Right?
I don't think it was Old Farmer's Almanac, but I think it was Reader's Digest that told him that if you guys put mustard on your sunburn, then it would take the sting out.
Right.
And so...
And all we did was smell like hot dogs.
My mama and I were like laughing our butts off because we were like, oh, it smells like hot dogs in here. But then the other thing that mustard was good for...
It's a cure-all.
Well, mustard was a cure-all, but it was a cramp.
Right.
He'd get a cramp in his leg or something like that and then take a spoonful of mustard. And in his defense... Like now, I keep mustard in the house for that very reason. So,
Honey Dijon or?
Oh no! You gotta have the good old Frenches, like make your mouth pucker up, the whole thing, right? What other wives' tales did he have? Oh my goodness gracious! Like, even whenever I was pregnant and like it was always, well, you know what? The moon's doing so and so, and it was all based on all of these things.
Right.
And when he would go hunting, my dad was a big raccoon hunter, and so. The certain moons, you could know when things were happening and when all of that was going on. So, yes, that was very, very much like the fishing, when you would do all of the things. So, I don't know. But, yes, I think maybe what this week has shown me is that I need to go back and invest in... the Old Farmer's Almanac and pay a little bit more attention to what exactly the moon is doing, what exactly is happening in the atmosphere, the weather, because...
Sometimes it's just not you. Sometimes.
I love that. I love that. I love that we have this documented.
It can't be 100% your fault.
Exactly. You were in
99.99999% your fault.
You were in a grumpy mood, and it was not because of anything that I said or did, or our children.
Right.
So, that rarely happens. You were just in a bad mood. You were very much in a bad mood. So here's the question. Is the bad mood over?
Got another week.
I had another week of this crap? Oh, no.
And then we start building the moon again.
Oh, and then you get happy again. Okay. So for anybody who's wondering why we do this podcast and what actually comes about it, I can assure you, Patrick has laughed more in the 7 minutes that we have been doing this than he has the entire week that we have been together. To the point, because again, I feel like this is a great time to interject this, that I even said, you know what, let's just get away for a little while, okay? And said I was going to get away. He said, yeah, let's go, okay? I packed a bag, ready to go. And then he came back and was ill. Again, not with me because I hadn't done anything. But he's like, nah, it's not worth it. Let's not go.
Yeah.
And so I had to unpack my clothes.
Right.
So we're coming out of the bad mood.
Right.
All right. Well, all right. I'm excited. I'm excited to see what fun things we can actually talk about this week.
Right.
Excited.
So this week I read an article.
Okay. Well, first of all, congratulations for reading. That makes me very happy.
I all the time read. I just don't read your crap.
Not including my text messages. But please continue.
Right. So the article was pretty interesting. It was titled, I feed 300 people, my farm feeds 300 people, but can't feed my family. And it kind of went through this one particular farmer's take. And, we talk about that a family farm will feed 300 people on average. And that we are to feed the world or feed the 9 billion, right? But he was going broke. And so he couldn't feed his family because of he was going broke.
And again, we've lived that. And
right.
And again, I've lived that my whole life.
Right.
With my dad and, even our family farm.
Right.
There was so many struggles that we had as a farming family in the 80s and
right.
90s of sorts, that my dad ended up taking a job off the farm, and I didn't realize what was happening then.
Mm-hmm.
But now, watching all of that, what's happening with the market, what's happening in the world to make it that way?
Well, our main problem is the input costs, things that we have to do to grow crops is gone sky high, but the commodity prices is either stagnant or has dropped, and so we're having to spend more money and either have the same gross outcome or even less. Dairy farmers, which we talk about, like dairy is really impressive, but the price of milk that dairy farmers are receiving today is the same price that they received in the 70s.
That's so sad, because again, the cost of living and all of those
right.
things is not the same now.
Taxes have gone up, the equipment costs have gone up, the environmental costs all these costs have gone up, but they're making the same money per gallon of milk today that they did in the 70s.
So, and again, I guess I go back to thinking about, if I'm just a food consumer and I'm walking in the grocery store, all I'm thinking about is prices have gone up, so therefore,
it's not going to the farmer though.
Who does it go to?
The retailers and the middlemen and distributors and the brokers, the people representing the farmers. And it's a system that got created because there had to be it didn't have to be, but the companies, which are global companies, have had to figure out a way to streamline who they were buying from, to streamline who they were paying. So then you created all these people in between the farmer and the consumer, and they still get their margins. Like that, the system is set that they're going to get their margins. But when we have to have a setback on putting fertilizer from the herbicides from property line, well, then we're going to have a lower yield on where we're not putting fertilizer or herbicides out. So we're losing money on that ground, but we got to tend that ground, and there's still a cost to that ground. But it was very. It's supplied. It's supplied to the farmer. But it was a very interesting perspective to put it in that terms, that my farm feeds families, but I can't feed my own.
And we've been there.
Mm-hmm.
We've been there.
Right.
I remember our children wanting to go on field trips, and $20 here, $50 here to go on an FFA trip. We were always be the last ones to pay
right.
for our kids to go. We knew that they were going to go. We
right.
knew we would somehow or another find the money and make that sacrifice, but it was always not real sure whether or not that $20 or that $50 needed to go and be allocated to a bill at the farm or
right.
at the processing plant or something like that. And so at what
right.
point we pulled it, for lack of a better term, out of the system of the farm.
Right. But I don't know. When we talk about, agriculture is a business, but it's the only business that somebody, in a traditional sense, works off the farm. And they're working for health care and they're working for some sort of retirement, right? And at what point is it that we turn around and say, wait a second, we're a business, so we need to change how products are valued so that then we are the ones to get the return. When we talk about this too, the brokers and the distributors and the retailers have the least risk. I'm not going to say they got zero risk, but they got the least risk. I got to get that damn cow in mood for that bull to breed, right?
Right.
I got to make sure that we don't have hail or we don't have floods or we don't just the simple fact that we have the most risk, but yet we get the least return, and the system's screwed up.
And I agree. I mean, because at some point, I mean, we all eat, and we all talk about how much we value farmers, and I don't even really like using the term farmers anymore. A lot of times, if I'm talking in a more educated setting, I will say things like food producers, because farmers are not, they don't look like what the stereotypical word of a whatever. So people who are food producers, people who are agriculturalists, you have biologists, you have all of those things. So understanding that there is such a science to food right now, and there has to be such knowledge behind every decision that is made on the farm, and that profitability and all of those things. And so, I think about the companies that I interact with who have somebody who manages their payroll and their taxes, and who, is an economist who can kind of look and see the average farming family encompasses all of those roles within their house.
But we also got a problem with the system in the sense that social media or influences have driven desires from the consumer in what they want to put their purchases to. But what's happening is then that goes up to the companies. So like, I'll use example Nestle.
Okay.
So Nestle, chocolate and milk, right?
Right.
They have other things, but those are two main things. So Nestle, the consumers have said to Nestle, hey, we want you to reduce your carbon, your greenhouse gas exposure, carbon footprint.
Okay.
All right. So then what they're going to do is, it's in the work, they're going to force the dairy farmer to have a feed additive that reduces greenhouse gas. And that farmer's going to have to pay for this and implement it in order for his milk to go to Nestle. Okay?
Okay.
But the milk price was the same.
So, and again, it's so hard to balance, because even I don't know what the balance is, in the sense of we all want a greener climate.
Right.
We all want longevity for our planet. We all can honestly recognize some of the failures of previous decisions across all industries. So we all want that, and we all see the need for it. Why is it ultimately at the farmer's responsibility to change that, to make those decisions or make those switches?
Because those major companies have shareholders they have to answer to, and they got to have dividends. And so they're making sure that their investors are covered, but are forcing the farmer to make the change. But we talk about two things I always bring up. Number one, as divisive as the world is today, there's two things that we have in common: we chew and we swallow.
Yeah, you said that. Right.
So okay, we found something we all are in agreement to, is that we all chew and swallow. Let's work from there. But the other thing is, LeBron James, or name some famous athlete, right? Making millions and millions and millions of dollars. But in order for him to make millions and millions and millions of dollars, they have to eat, right?
Well, yeah.
So when are we going to change our priorities, in that the person who is allowing you to chew and swallow something is the one that is making the margins, not the person who is shooting a basket or throwing a ball, or, it's a challenge.
Well, and again, I'm definitely understand the financial side of that, because again, we live that. But for me, I think the part that frustrates me the most is just how uneducated people think that farmers and food producers are, and how we are just some hick people in backwoods kind of, thing. But the truth is, some of the greatest environmentalists, some of the greatest economists, some of the greatest, all of those people are the food producers that we know and love, and hopefully some of the things that, are happening in our family as well. And so that kind of struggles with me. And I will flip back to another conversation. A lot of conversations that Patrick and I have are honestly with farmers. But we were at a conference with educators, and it was a whole different world. And we were sitting there, and actually one of the educators that was there was an ag teacher, and we were sitting at a table, and it was a principal who just happened to be at this educator table. And what did he say?
He said that farming's easy because they got QR codes on signs at the edge of the field, and the farmer has to go there, or he doesn't have to. He goes there and scans the QR code, and it tells that field what to do, whether it needs irrigation or fertilizer or be sprayed or be harvested. That QR code tells the farmer, or the QR code is the farmer giving that field directions. Right. I shit you not.
Right. And so we're going to break that down just a little bit. But we were sitting there at a dinner table and not really talking ag, right? And that's what this principal says. He was like, well, first of all, I thought all farmers were rich.
Rich, yep.
And we were like, what farmers do you know? Like, what? And he's like, well, you all have big tractors and you all have all this equipment, so therefore you must be rich. And so that kind of started a conversation. And then we were talking similar to this about the risk or whatever. So again, this was a very educated man who said he thought that the QR codes that he passes on the road in a field that has Pioneer or something like that was what you scan to tell them, like, how to deal with the rain or moisture or things like that. We all sat there and we were just dumbfounded. And for those who may not know what he's referencing, what was he talking about, Patrick?
He was talking about the seed company signs. And if you scanned the QR code, it would tell you about what that variety was. And it was a marketing piece. Right. That's what it is. It's promotion and marketing.
But this educator, I promise you he is a smart man. I promise you he has degrees and leads things, truly thought that in our little backwoods roads of eastern North Carolina, that we have the technology to scan a QR code as farmers and adjust the amount of rain, the amount of fertilizer, and all of those things, and that it's not real hard. So to bring all of this back together, again, families are trying their hardest right now to feed and take care of their families. And feed the world. Right. Because, again, we keep talking about that. Everybody's got to feed the world. Yeah. But, ultimately, you got to feed your family first.
Right. And we made decisions into our operation, make changes, right, and that are environmentally sound. And whatever. Our reasons for doing it was that we found ways to implement these technologies or these practices to save us money that would then provide us a better return. Anyhow, the bottom line though is we aren't the only ones tired. The whole system's bent under pressure, and but through it all, there's still people who are doing it right.
Absolutely, and we want to make sure that we're championing those people who are doing it right, and shout out to all of those who are truly being food producers right now in a very, very tough economy and a tough time to be an ag. So the more we've been talking about farming and agriculture and life in general, and just how being raw and open to a lot of that, there's a song that I have been referencing repeatedly to you, and I don't know why it's been in my head a lot, but it's that there's some famous friends, and it's by Chris Young and Kane Brown, and it talks about how, he's got a buddy who holds the record for touchdown throws. But he goes into saying, the chorus, I've got some famous friends you've probably never heard of, and you might not know them here in this big city we're in, but when I go back home, I've got some famous friends. And it's just really kind of led to some conversations in our house about kind of some of the famous people we know.
Yeah, and I mean, and the conversation's been happening is that there are those people that everybody sees and hears from, right? That everybody sees in the media, or that they're in town and such and such came home, and but we also talk about we've also talked about that there are some quiet people. Well, Curtis ain't quite quiet, is he?
No, quiet is not.
But there are some quiet people who are legends. But they're legends because of the impact that they've given, but they did it very subtle and very quiet. But then also, and this is the part that I had reflected on, was that they're not satisfied with the status quo. Even though they have made their mark on this world, they are still out there championing and improving and fighting, for the next generation. And so we were talking about, we just brought up Curtis. Curtis is just, oh God, get him on a just all you got to do is say a couple words and then he goes on a tangent. But he was not only president of his state beef board, but also, like right now, he is fighting about wildfire protection, management, and those things. And then, just a couple weeks ago, he had a wildfire go through his property last year, and he's reseeding with the drones. And he's fascinated about these drones.
Okay, so just to interject here, are you saying Curtis is like a 40, 50-year-old man who's embraced drone technology?
No. He's on up there in age.
Okay.
But I mean, he was being faced with, getting his rangelands repopulated with forages, and he got introduced to, well, why don't you try it with the drone? And now all of a sudden, every daggone day is something about a drone. And he's all fascinated by it, and but where we're getting at though is he's just not fighting for his family. He is out there advocating for all of the Western families that have been affected by wildfires here in the last several years, and trying, because that's a struggle in its whole self, right? But forage management. And then also, if you had a wildfire, how do you get back up and running? But he's been fighting with the legislatures, with the bankers, and he's that person that you just and he, with respect, he's that person that I just heard him spout off a bunch of fun words, and then all of a sudden he just opens his mouth again, and then it's like, wow, that's very poignant. But we talk about. Mike out of Kansas, nutritionist, he's so quiet. He just sits there and he listens. So when he opens his mouth, you're like, oh crap, I got to pay attention. But he, working with nutrition and animal health, but he just embraces of how do we improve the system, but then also advocating for that next generation. And then anything that he does today isn't to benefit him. It's to benefit the kids and the grandkids that are going to be taking over. But then also includes in his community all young people. And he's fascinating about young people. But he's just, him, and then we talk about Garth. Garth was my mentor. Garth was my mentor.
Right.
I will say that over and over and over again. And I met Garth over 30 years ago and was just fascinated by who he was and his stance. But even to this day, he's now into global and environmental pieces, and I pick up the phone at any time. And
Well, and again, he was one of the first cattle people that you and I kind of knew together. But even this past summer, Garth mentored our son,
right,
and took the time to talk to our son about
right,
what he's seeing and things like that.
He has a very balanced leadership in terms of he balances academia, industry, and government, but from a global perspective, you know, and so.
But most people probably have never heard of him.
No.
Okay.
No, and you know, and that's where, and we could just name over and over and over and over again. You know, we got Mark in Montana. Oh my gosh, like he's sitting there one day and then all of a sudden he starts talking about an experience of his, and I'm like, wait, what? Do what? And you know, and all that he'd done, and I'm like, I would never. It's these old cowboys who have been behind the fence line, can't see them from the road, but the marks that they leave on this earth, we don't know in the industry because their name wasn't tagged to it because they don't want their name tagged to it, right? But things that they did is why we are where we're at today and why we continue to improve. And you know, they're not complacent with it.
I can agree with that. Even, you know, Mr. Larry is one of the quietest, sweetest people I know. But when we start talking, I immediately think of him for any kind of trade question or anything. He is like my go-to trade person.
Right. He wakes up every day and looks at export and import numbers.
Wow.
And every day, and he's been monitoring that for years. And decades actually, and so, but you know, and the irony is that none of them are ever going to get awards, right? That's the irony. They don't want it. They just want to give them a little drink, right? but
even more so than a little drink, how about just a little respect?
Right.
Because I definitely think that, you know, we have a small store in our community where you can pretty much count on all the farmers going to stop for lunch and, you know, have a burger, have a hot dog kind of mindset in the middle of a day. But how many times do we see these people and not understand the amount of knowledge and wisdom and, for lack of a better term, grit that these people have?
It wasn't for accolades.
Absolutely.
It was this is what we need to do.
Absolutely. And being able to kind of pull, you know, the past and learn from that, but still embrace the future. Patrick has a friend who is also a cattleman in Florida who has going back to school now, and AI is kind of, you know, such a new and foreign concept. And, you know, again, even in our generation, which, again, we are that sandwich generation, if you will. I mean, we remember when we got our first email account, when we got our first cell phone, when we got, you know, all of those things. And now we sometimes struggle with where technology is and how fast it has, how fast it's grown. And now to know that, you know, the Curtises and, you know, the Larrys and, you know, the Mikes and all of those people of the world are just showing up every day at their local, you know, diners and sitting down and, you know, doing all of those things. But they're also networking and making and being a voice for.
I had an old man tell me one time, and this is his belief, is that you are building in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. And it's your job to hold what you built and then allow the next 20-year-old to come in and take that spot and then build from there. And so, and that's what I think about. When I think about these gentlemen that we're talking about, is that these guys have built, they held, and then they encourage, right? They encourage, well, it's because we're stupid. no, but they have said, okay, we have taken it to this spot. Now, come and let's move it forward some, to the next, and then be ready to, not step aside and not leave it. There's still people you can consult with, right? And that's what we do a lot of times is we talk and ask questions, and they're willing to answer. Like we need to, like screwworm.
Right.
We weren't here in the 60s and 70s when we were fighting it. We're fixing to be fighting it again. We need to be gathering all these old cowboys up and saying, okay, what did you do? And some of these gentlemen are the ones that are willing to share and to guide.
Right. And along these same lines, because, as much as I genuinely do enjoy the cowboy stories and all of that, and I love hearing from them, I always take away from the fact that all of these men have extremely strong women,
right,
who are actively involved in their lives and in their decision making, and who challenge them and call them out and banter, very similar to us. But if the old cowboy is not getting the accolade, I can assure you, the wife at home who is, doing all the things that the wife does, and again, I can't even begin to put that into words, they don't necessarily get the same level of respect or whatever either. And so just knowing that, there's such a respect that's happening in these families, and I keep going back to the word, but it's the only word that truly speaks to me when we're talking about these people, and it's just the grit, the get up and yes, you fell off and not brush it off, and we've definitely had a lot of those moments in our lives, and some of these same people have been the ones who have said to us, okay, so now what you're going to do next, because you can't lay there and...
I'll leave it with, you don't have to be well known to be worth knowing.
I love that. You don't have to be well known to be worth knowing, and we are blessed with a lot of people who are worth knowing in our lives.
Right. Man, social media has blown up this week. And it wasn't my fault.
I was going to say, it wasn't even us. I know, right? So unless you are living under a rock, you know what happened at the Coldplay concert this week.
What an idiot. What an idiot.
Tell me what this idiot did.
He was having an affair, but he took his daggone mistress to a concert in Coldplay. Who in the hell wants to go to Coldplay concert? But he takes her to Coldplay. And then that kiss cam jumbotron thing. I believe in 2025, we already have secured the new word for the Webster's Dictionary.
Which is what?
I've been Coldplayed.
You've been Coldplayed, okay.
Means a verb. I've been screwed. I've been caught. I just lost my millions.
And the memes and the TikToks and all of these things that have come out of this. And you're right. The man has lost his job. The woman, all of those things. And again, only they can decide whether or not this was worth it.
This ain't going to be 50-50.
No.
He lost it all.
We've been saying all along that divorce is too expensive.
Right.
But for, this was definitely a mistake that is going to cost them. But again, I'm the voice with the heart. I'm the one that's not necessarily, I do read the memes and all of that. But all I can think about is, this poor wife and these poor kids and poor husband who were just absolute innocent bystanders who knows what they had been told.
And I think about what freaking morons the two lovebirds were.
But they woke up to, or all of a sudden their phone starts blowing up to some well-intentioned friend who's like, hey, did you see? And we've been through some small town gossip, and we definitely have lived through our versions of that, where you feel like the whole world, well, in our world, it's our whole little community is talking about you, and did you hear about them, and who do they think they are, and what about this decision, because again, that's small town gossip. But these poor people are no longer small town gossip.
No.
These people are international gossip. And we joked about, the Colonel Sanders says that, what was his tweet?
That Colonel Sanders is Kentucky Fried Chicken. They have all these spices and recipes that have been secret all these years.
So they can help.
Right.
And then Morgan Wallen, in his concert made the announcement that, he was going to span to the audience for the kiss cam. So, take a step back from anybody and said, for the record, I don't condone cheating.
Anymore.
And so all of this is kind of unraveled in this world of how do you manage gossip when it feels like the whole world is talking about you, and what do you do with that?
I don't know. There's a difference of being interesting and being infamous.
I can agree with that. Well, and my going back to what my granddad used to say, something about if you're going to be stupid, you better be.
Oh.
You better be.
Anytime you say Sea Captain's name, I chuckle.
I don't know. There was my cousin, somebody will have to correct me with it. But yes, you're going to do something stupid. Everybody's going to talk about it, but you better know how to navigate all of that, because people.
And I've done stupid shit in my day, right? And people have told on me, right?
Very much so.
Right. But I have never gone to that level of stupidity.
Well, and again, stupid is as stupid does, and people can say all the things, because again, when people are talking about you, it doesn't matter. It feels like the whole world is talking about you. I deal with high school people and drama all the time, and again, we live in a small town and people talk about everything all the time, but there's nothing that the world loves more than to catch you and be like, I got you. And we've said that quite a bit, used the analogy of standing on a chair. It is so much easier for you to be on the chair and pull somebody up. It's easier for people to pull you off the chair than it is for you to pull them up, because people are going to be constantly pulling at you. And so, we all have kind of enjoyed the Coldplay thing. Everybody's laughed about it. Everybody has said, what an idiot. We're all vested in the memes and think that it is just funny. But there are some human sides to that, and there's some lessons to be learned.
Right.
So I continue to introspect on that and learn some lessons, but what lesson did you learn from that,
If
Patrick?
you're going to get caught, don't do it at Coldplay. That's a wrap on episode 4 of Rural Roots and Cowboy Boots. Whether you believe in moon phases or just need a phase of rest, we see you.
To our fellow farmers and ranchers out there, you're not alone in the struggle, and you don't have to be loud to make a difference.
And hey, if someone talks about you this week, just pray it's not on social media.
And don't forget to rate, review, and tell your friends about this episode. And if you've got a famous friend the world ought to know about, shoot us a message. We'll be back next week with more grit, grace, and probably another ridiculous story from Patrick's life. See y'all then.
It's ours to keep.